Understand the dynamic of what happened here. The CDC could have adopted the World Health Organization tests. In South Korea, where now they've had 4 days in a row of diminished cases being found. In other words, they had multiple weeks of testing 10,000 people per day with nasal swabs at drive-thrus. Like, they were able to sort of isolate who has it, who doesn't. You're quarantined. We've stopped the roll of it. And now, I mean, you look at what's happening in New York, right? Like, now, I don't know, 150 people up in Westchester, cluster around something. They got people on the west side. I mean, it's happening. You're starting to see it pop up everywhere now. And because nobody could get tests, nobody's getting tested. Nobody's getting tested. Relatively speaking, there is no concerted effort, no broad plan to test. And so the CDC, when they first rolled out their test, localities were realizing, like, this test is not working. It's a bad test. Why don't you just adopt the World Health Organization test? Now, I don't know the reason why they didn't do this. I don't know that they've publicly said why, because they keep getting asked this question. My guess is we're going to find out at one point. Trump had a donor that was like, we can make the test, right? Like, it's a money play. And, but here is the CDC people being asked, like, why don't you just adopt the World Health Organization test? Like, people are producing that test.
Testing with just the two signatures. And this is something that could easily happen where we're just, again, starting from scratch with sequence information, building a test rather rapidly. We did small-scale testing here before rolling it out because our goal was to get it out to the public health labs as quickly as possible.
You didn't have to start from scratch. You could have just used the WHO's test. Why did you choose to start from scratch when it would be a longer process?
Pause it. Now,
listen.
Pause it. See, she's asking, well, why did you start from scratch? Why did you start from scratch, do limited testing, send it out, find out that it's bad? Why didn't you just start with the WHO test, the World Health Organization test? And here's his response.
You could have just used the WHO's test. Why did you choose to start from scratch when it would be a longer process?
But we started with our test probably at the same time the Germans and the other Italians and the other groups that have worked with WHO were on developing their test. Nobody could start with test development until the sequence information was made available by the Chinese.
Right, but theirs didn't have any faults.
I'd like to make one thing clear.
Please.
When this test was developed in really very rapid time, it was first offered here at CDC. So all the public health labs of this nation could use CDC as we do when any new disease comes, and we can help them understand if this new pathogen is in that individual. That was available as soon as our test was approved by the FDA. Not a faulty test, a very accurate test. But the challenge was you had to send the sample here to CDC. That's the same test we use today. So no state lab never had no access. They always had the ability to send it here.
But they had to send it here because there were false reads.
No, they had to send it here because that's how we started it. Then we developed the test to expand, and in the manufacturing, there was, then after that, we sent it out to the states to see if they could verify that it worked. We found that in some of the states it didn't work. We figured out why. I don't consider that a fault. I consider that doing quality control. I consider that success, making sure this test was going to perform out there with the same proficiency that it performed here.
He stopped himself because the sequencing of what he was saying was wrong. They sent the test out to the states. It didn't work. And that's a success. We found that we failed. And every entrepreneur will tell you, if you don't have 5 failures, you need 5 failures for every success. Now, of course, there is a successful test that was already being deployed. For whatever reason, our test took longer to deploy and to find out was wrong. And then once you found out that was wrong, why did you have to go back and fix it? Why didn't you just adopt the WHO test? And I am quite convinced it is because the manufacturer, like, there was some deal where, like, Well, we're going to want the patent so that we can basically give one of our manufacturers the ability to create this test and make some money. I mean, this is just my own speculation, but there has to be, it wasn't just American pride. We didn't want any of that German test.
We don't want to copy their homework.
Oh my God. We're not like that.
We're doing extra credit on our own.
We want to do it. Not have like sauerkraut on it or whatever it is.
I guess we're getting a public option for something.
Yeah, there we go.
New York has introduced its own hand sanitizer, actually, speaking of public options for things made by prison labor. So good job, Cuomo.
Well,
God. I was just about excited about that.
Well, maybe that means that they'll at least get some hand sanitizer in the prisons. Because I heard a story about I think it was at Rikers, were just like, please send some hand sanitizer. We don't have any here.
Oh, yeah.
There's no soap.
It is also part of the public plan to use prison labor to bury the dead from coronavirus. Are we just saying it now? The C word?
COVID-19. Did I say it?
Yeah, you've been saying it.
Well, whatever. We're going to plan. Oh, we'll take care of that. We'll take care of that afterwards. Here's Ben Carson. Here's how Ben Carson was sent out to explain that away the idea that we refused to use the World Health Organization test, that we created our own test. It was a failure in the test, had to be sent back to the CDC. They're trying to reformulate the test, and then they are manufacturing the test, and that's why we don't have enough tests for everybody. We refuse to use the WHO test, which has already been in production. They've been doing 10,000 in South Korea. We couldn't use their test. That's South Koreans. I don't know if it works the same way.
Made in USA, baby.
And here's Dr. Ben Carson explaining what's all the obsession about the test?
Response to Governor Cuomo, and what kind of assurances can you provide the tests are on the way?
Well, over 1 million tests were shipped out already this past week. Tomorrow, another 640,000 will be available. And those are only the ones that are being dealt with on a federal official level. There are also tests being created by the veterans hospitals, and most of the academic centers have them. So there are a lot of tests, but the key thing is everybody doesn't need a test. And that should be something that should be determined by the medical professionals who are administering the test.
Yeah, that's the argument. Now, the million have been shipped out, but unfortunately, they've been shipped by Pony Express. They're doing, this is going to be like a Balto situation where they do like a little mini Iditarods, and the lack of snow is slowing everything down.
We're pretty sure those ones aren't faulty, but we'll hear about that in a week if they are.
Right. Not everybody needs a test, but when you have here's the problem. You got, just to use Westchester, right? This outbreak in Westchester. The guy apparently worked in New York City. And so he comes down in New York City and you can't even test all the people who had contact with him. So you don't know if the people who had contact with him contracted it. And then you don't know because you're going to wait. By the time you wait the 14 days to find out if anybody got it, then the number of people who have been in contact with all those people it's exponentially growing. You need tests. You need mass testing in order to slow this thing down. It's just stunning. And on that same day, Mike Pence is out there saying we don't have enough tests for today. But Ben Carson is saying, well, not everybody needs a test.